Hello, everyone. Welcome to Untold History, the channel where we explore the most significant, often tragic, and lesser-known events of our recent past. Today, we are going to delve into one of the darkest episodes in modern history, the Rwandan Genocide, which occurred in 1994, where more than 800,000 people, mainly of the Tutsi ethnic group, were killed in a brutal outbreak of violence that shook the world. Not only did this event leave a deep scar on Rwanda, but it also raised serious questions about the inaction of the international community and the ability of nations to stop such atrocities. The genocide in Rwanda began on April 6, 1994, after the downing of the plane carrying Rwandan President Juvenal Habyarimana and Burundian President Cyprien Ntaryamira, both of whom are Hutu. The bombing of the plane triggered a wave of violence in which Hutu extremists, already prepared and organized, began a systematic massacre against the Tutsi population and moderate Hutus who opposed the genocide. In just 100 days, more than 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were brutally murdered in Rwanda. To understand the genocide, it is necessary to know the historical and social context of Rwanda, a Central African country with a history of ethnic tensions between the Hutus and the Tutsis, two of the country's main ethnic groups. Throughout the 20th century, these tensions were exacerbated by Belgium's colonial policies, which favored Tutsis in the administration of the country, leading to resentment among the Hutu majority. This resentment culminated in a series of ethnic conflicts that scarred the country for decades, eventually leading to genocide. In 1959, a Hutu revolution took place that led to the overthrow of the Tutsi monarchy and the establishment of a Hutu government. Over the next few decades, tensions between the two groups continued to rise, and many Tutsis were persecuted and expelled from the country. Many of these exiles formed the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, a military organization composed mainly of exiled Tutsis, which aimed to regain power and end discrimination. In 1990, the RPF launched a military invasion from Uganda, which started a civil war in Rwanda that lasted until the start of the genocide in 1994. Although peace agreements were signed in 1993, tensions remained high, and Hutu extremists, who opposed any form of reconciliation or power-sharing, began planning for genocide. Radical groups such as the National Republican Movement for Democracy and Development, MRND, with the support of militias such as the Interahamwe, prepared lists of people to kill and train thousands of militiamen. The downing of the presidential plane in April 1994 provided the perfect pretext for the Hutu extremists to carry out their plans. Within hours, extremist-controlled radio stations began broadcasting propaganda, inciting the Hutu population to cut down the tall trees, a euphemism for the killing of Tutsis. Interahamwe militias, along with government forces, began going from house to house, massacring Tutsis and moderate Hutus who opposed the genocide. The violence was indiscriminate and extremely brutal. The victims were killed mainly with machetes, clubs, and other rudimentary weapons. The massacres took place in churches, schools, and hospitals, where many Tutsis had taken refuge in the hope of finding protection. However, in many cases, these facilities were directly attacked, and those inside were mercilessly killed. The systematic rape of Tutsi women was another tactic used by the perpetrators, and it is estimated that tens of thousands of women were raped during the genocide. One of the most devastating aspects of the genocide was the inaction of the international community. Despite previous warnings that genocide was imminent, the UN and major world powers failed to intervene to stop the massacre. The United Nations Assistance Mission for Rwanda, UNAMIR, led by Canadian General Romeo Dallaire, had an extremely limited mandate and lacked the resources to stop the violence. As the genocide unfolded, many countries withdrew their peacekeepers from Rwanda, leaving civilians at the mercy of the perpetrators. As the massacres continued, the Rwandan Patriotic Front, led by Paul Kagame, launched a military offensive to stop the genocide and overthrow the Hutu government. The RPF, composed mainly of Tutsis, advanced from the north of the country and, after months of fighting, managed to capture the capital, Kigali, in July 1994, ending the genocide. By then, however, hundreds of thousands of people had already been killed, and the country was devastated. The end of the genocide marked the beginning of a long and difficult process of reconstruction and reconciliation in Rwanda. Paul Kagame, who assumed leadership of the country, implemented a series of policies to unify the population and punish those responsible for the genocide. Gakaka courts, a traditional justice system, were created to try perpetrators, while senior leaders were brought before the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR, established by the United Nations in Arusha, Tanzania. Despite these efforts, the genocide left deep psychological and social scars on the country. Tens of thousands of people were displaced, and many communities were completely destroyed. In addition, the ethnic wound between Hutus and Tutsis remains a sensitive issue in Rwandan society, despite the government's efforts to promote a unified national identity. This event is remembered today as one of the worst atrocities of the 20th century and a symbol of the international community's failure to prevent genocide. The inaction of the UN and powerful countries such as the United States and France has been widely criticized, and this episode has led to greater reflection on the responsibility to protect vulnerable populations from crimes against humanity. The legacy of genocide has shaped Rwanda's future. Today, under the leadership of Paul Kagame, the country has experienced rapid economic development and a surprising degree of political stability. However, the debate over the concentration of power in this regime and the repression of dissent remains a matter of controversy. Despite the progress, the underlying ethnic tensions have not completely disappeared, and Rwanda remains a country scarred by the horrors of its recent past. The history of the Rwandan genocide reminds us of the fragility of peace and the need for international vigilance to prevent such atrocities in the future. As the world continues to face new human rights challenges, the Rwandan genocide remains a painful warning about the consequences of indifference and inaction. Thank you for joining us in this analysis of the Rwandan genocide. If you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell for more revealing stories in Untold history. See you in the next one.